Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Law and Finance Show. And today we have another great guest on. Now, I've had the privilege of meeting this person in person and actually seeing her in action speaking at a workshop for law firms. She was phenomenal. Everyone loved what she had to say because she's not only, lived through it, but she's also an example for so many other people. And I'm excited because she's going to be doing a lot more speaking engagements come 2023. And I'm glad that she could stop by and be a guest on the show. So stay tuned for today's episode. So without further ado, let me bring on my guest, Jen. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, welcome. Thank you for having me on here today. It's such a pleasure to be on here with you.
Absolutely. I have been looking forward to this because I will say is that, a lot of people tell me like, Terrell, you guys have like so much content going on social media, but I'm just like, Jen is probably one person I would say is like, I think she's got me beat. And it's not just, she's just throwing up stuff. It's just like, it's valuable stuff that you're putting up on a regular basis.
We made a commitment in the beginning of this year that we were going to do at least a video a day, which was a lot. It was a lot to commit to, but it's actually like we've got it kind of systematized. So it doesn't, it's kind of like we're just used to it. But yeah, I mean, it, it's like it's, you have to break through a lot of distraction right now. So I think quantity does matter.
And I think that's a very important point because I mean, your firm is in the personal injury space, and I will say is, having worked with different law firms from a bookkeeping and CFO perspective, like personal injury seems to be the most intense when it comes down to competition and marketing. So, I mean,
Well, why do you think that is though, Terrell? I think you know the answer. It's a financial answer.
I mean, I think it is personal injury from what I have seen and working with a couple of firms is it can be very profitable. And where there is high profitability, people see opportunity. So there seems to be a lot of law firms that are looking and is scalable too, because what a lot of firms I've seen is they end up having like more of their staff. They can do the work where they don't have to be in court and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, that's from my finance perspective. Now, from your perspective, I mean, do you have a different one?
I think it comes down to, as a marketer, you look at the cost per click across all pay-per-click campaigns on Google, and I believe personal injury is one of the highest because, you could hypothetically get a case that could be worth millions and millions of dollars off that one click and that one case. And I think that's what everyone is always hoping for. Statistically, I don't think that most cases are, worth multiple $1 million, but there's a lot of other areas of law where there's no case that could be worth that. So that's why I think it's been so competitive. Great risk, great reward, but definitely lots of risk.
And so I am very much looking forward to jumping in and talking about the business side of practicing in personal injury. But before we jump into the details of that, for those that may not be familiar with you and for whatever reason they're not already following you on social media, can you tell them a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so my name is Jen Gore-Cuthbert, and I am the owner and founder of Atlanta Personal Injury Law Group, and you guessed it, Atlanta. Um, I'm really throughout the state of Georgia, but we help people navigate the insurance process after they've been seriously hurt in an accident. I started the law firm in 2013. I was in my own serious accident when I was in college and was close to somebody that died in a motorcycle accident. So kind of the law chose me, and I was originally just going to have my own business. I really wasn't going to be a lawyer, but a series of events occurred, and I decided that I really should become a lawyer. And now I get the benefit of being a lawyer and owning my own business. So the best of both worlds.
Now you mentioned about that, you were planning to just, you were going to be a business owner. Like, where did that kind of entrepreneurial energy, where did that come from?
It's in my blood, Terrell. I grew up in New York, and my dad is what I would call like a serial entrepreneur. And I was born in that crazy mindset, the entrepreneur's mindset. I like truly remember as a child. We were talking like last week. It's so funny. I had my own newsletter that I published weekly to my street, and my parents still have like a copy of it. It's really funny. So like I had like a newsletter going. We used to sell stuff. Like that was like we used to put on all kinds of productions and shows in the neighborhood. We had no iPads, so my parents were like, "There's no such thing as being bored. You either do something or come to work."
I love that. I love that. I mean, I could just imagine, like, you should probably do like a social media post of like, if you can find some of those old pictures of your production or something.
Oh, I had my little MS-DOS, and I was always like the leader, right? So I would always be like, guys, we need to find a story. So it'd be like, Bob got a new car. That was like our main news for the week. We used to make our own crosswords. It was like really, but it was a great time. I mean, my mom cut hair, and she had her own little like hair salon in our house, and then my dad had many different businesses.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. It's always interesting to see, how people who have that entrepreneurial energy where they started and just kind of how that progressed. Because I was given a speech once at a conference, and they were just asking like, "Hey, what made you want to start your business?" And I'm like, well, it probably started back when I was 5. And I just like, when I was doing a job working in companies, I always felt like, man, if I don't start my business, I'm going to get fired from this job because like, I'm not going to fit into this little box. So now for many lawyers, they say, hey, I went to law school, I started in big law or worked for some other law firms before starting my own firm. So how did your story kind of unfold after law school?
Well, just to like touch on what you just said, like whatever, I truly believe in a lot of this, and I know you're involved in like personal development, but like whatever you have as the vision for your life, it's going to like come true. And like you have to be so intentional about how you think about your life, because whatever you focus on is going to actually happen, whether it's positive or negative. And so like I was visualizing myself as a business owner since I was a very small child. And it sounds like you started visualizing yourself as a business owner at some point, along the journey. And, I acknowledge that there's people that, that thought never even comes into their mind. Like they visualize themselves working somewhere and having an amazing career. And I think my dad used to say, like, we need all kinds of people. Like we need people that do these things. We need people that want to own their own business. We need amazing people that want to be number 2 people in an organization. So like, I don't think entrepreneurship and owning a business is for everyone, but knowing that like whatever you think about the most and the vision you envision for your life, like it's ultimately going to come true. And so be super careful about that. And be clear that are you like visualizing the thing you really want, or have you just gone into a pattern and you haven't really put any thought into it? I mean, wouldn't you say like that's really so critical, is how you visualize your future?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that vision definitely played a huge role. Like even like sometimes like when I'm at, talking on like college campuses to students about like their career path, and I'm like, for me is I had to envision like every job had to fit into the bigger picture of where I was heading. Now, like when I was living through it, it didn't. But when I look back on it, it's just like, oh my gosh, like that was like the perfect role for me to be in at the right time. And in the grand scheme of things, it all, like you said, my life just gravitated to that ultimate image of what I was focused on. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and like I do my vision board every year and I set that new intention. We're getting ready to get to that point of the year and I like think about everything that I want to achieve in the next year and then sometimes like over the next 5 years. But how I got into owning my own law firm, I literally started it the day that I got my license. So I really wasn't ever a working lawyer that worked for a law firm, which in some ways was a huge challenge, you know. And everything, there's a pro and a con. I think
You know,
it's valuable, you know, that initial. I did work as a paralegal in a law firm, but never as a lawyer.
Gotcha. You know, one of the things that I've heard a lot of people say, like when they have worked as a lawyer for another firm, it's like, hey, I learned some of the processes. And then when I went and start my own. So for yourself, I mean, when you went straight into starting your own firm, it's like, do you feel like it took you a while to figure out your processes to even consider scaling and growing?
So I got into the day program for law school, but I switched into the night program. So I was in the night program of law school and I went year round and I worked during the day as like a personal injury case manager or paralegal or legal assistant / receptionist, like all the roles. So I did that for like 3 years. So, you know, it's kind of like I did work in a law firm. I just wasn't in the role of a lawyer. But, you know, I think that was such a valuable experience because you really realize that those people sometimes know more than what's going on than the lawyers, you know, the paralegals and the amazing support team. But when you talk about like processes that, you know, this and that, I just want to be really candid here. Most of the law firms that I work for were not well run. If I'm looking like hindsight, and no disrespect, but truly like looking at that now and saying like what systems and process, like they had none. And I think we need to be honest about that because I think that's a very common experience at many law firms across this country. There's like minimal to no processes or systems, especially small law firms.
Yeah, I will say,
So
having worked with several law firms, I can second that. I mean, and I do because I always laugh with people because I tell them I was like, you know, the more I work with law firms, the more I realize, you know, functionally the way that lawyers approach, you know, starting and running a law firm, very similar to how accountants, you know, approach starting and running an accounting firm. It's you were trained in the technical skill of it. But then once you get into it, it's just like you realize I have no idea how to actually like run a organization around my skill. So I totally agree with you.
and like in one of the law firms I was working at, I kept trying to like bring order to chaos. Like I was like, why don't we do this? And why don't we do that? And why don't we get this software? You know, and I think I felt frustrated because, you know, I had a lot of ideas and like, you know, well, you know, I didn't have any control. Like when you're not the owner, somebody like me would have done well in an organization that was really well run. I would have thrived in an environment that would have been like in the organization I've created here. But in where I was, it was just very frustrating because, you know, the people that I work for, they weren't business people, in my opinion. They didn't know how to run great law firms. And, you know, it's a lot of spinning in circles with different, you know, things, projects that are, you know, started and not finished. You know, a lot of times in those scenarios, you see the employees kind of making their own systems, but it's not uniformly run throughout the firm.
Yeah, I can definitely see that creating a huge issue. So
But
it's like when someone calls in, you never know what you're going to get.
yeah, and that's how you get like where there's one employee that kind of like has so much control and leverage over the whole business. They are like that master paralegal that knows everything and no one else knows how to use the stamp machine. and it's it's dangerous. But I also didn't know what I know today back then, and I just thought, okay, I'm here to more focus on learning the legal side. I wasn't so focused on the systems. That's not even something I thought I was going there to learn. I was trying to learn, how do we do personal injury cases? How do we file claims? How do we do all that? And I did learn a lot of that stuff, the legal. I think that's the interesting thing, is you can learn a lot of legal stuff, doesn't mean they know how to run a business and scale it, you know?
Yeah, so very true, very true. Now, I remember from, hearing a little bit of your story of at one point, you had just had a baby and you're still in the hospital and you're still taking calls. Like, so
Yeah,
tell
so
me about how you went from that to, hey, we got to get some, we have to actually run a business here.
well, so I started my law firm in 2013, and my daughter was about 2 months old. So I started the firm basically as a new mom. And when my second child was born in 2016, it was like two and a half years later. The business was starting to like chug along, and there was things were getting more ramped up, and I was hiring people, but I wasn't hiring fast enough. And so that's when I found myself in the situation where I had a baby, and I was in the hospital, and there was an emergency going on at the office, and I didn't have really any type of management in place. So my team was calling me saying there's an emergency at the office. It wasn't like a regular call. It was like a legit emergency. And I didn't have anyone really there to handle that stuff for me. And I remember thinking, this isn't right. Like, this is just whatever I'm doing, I ain't doing it right. So it was a huge wake up call for me. And immediately after that happened, I contacted my friend and I hired a business coach. And so I hired a
Gotcha.
business coach pretty much 2.5 years after opening the doors. And honestly, I wish I had hired him like a year after opening the door. Like, I find out now a lot of people don't hire a business coach like right out of the gate, but year two, I could have even done it sooner.
Hmm.
I just didn't. I don't know if I would have had the cash flow and or the mindset. Like year two and a half, I kind of started to have the money for me to take the risks, because I think like in the beginning when you have a contingency firm, the money is coming in, not immediately. So, but as soon as I basically got any cash flow, I hired a business coach.
Now, I guess what kind of, trajectory did you kind of see from once you hired the business coach and you started implementing some things, kind of where did your business go to from that point?
The first year I hired a business coach, my revenue tripled. Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, wish I would hired him a year earlier, but you know, that was very reaffirming. I think we all my dad had gone with me when I first hired the coach, like to meet them, and he was so skeptical. He was like, like we're business people. We don't need coaches. And I was like, Dad, you've never run a law firm, okay? And he was like, oh, okay. And then as soon as my revenue tripled, he's like, I guess there's a couple things you can learn from these people. I'm like, yeah, a lot. I know nothing. So, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. We've really never had a year we haven't grown. We've grown. Some years more than other. My third child, I had a full-blown maternity leave, engineered and orchestrated with my CFO. I went off grid for 2.5 months, and management and the attorneys ran the firm. So I feel like that was huge progress from my second child, and that's clear evidence of getting serious business coaching.
I would say that is huge progress. I know people who work a professional job who can't even do that. So,
That's
as
the
an owner, that's
problem.
huge.
Yeah, I'm so shocked. Even some of my friends that have massive firms, I am shocked at some of them. They've never gone off grid for 2.5 months. They never had a reason to, but I'm like, that's like a summer. Like you could go off grid for the whole summer.
Hmm. No, I think that is amazing to see that. Now, I guess, I want to talk a little bit about as you started, like, bringing on your team, and because some of that it requires you empowering the team. Like, what was the response of the team? Because something I find is that a lot of times when you're, in a smaller business, smaller growing business, the people you hire may not necessarily be used to being empowered to do things without having to run to get your approval on everything. So how did your team respond as you started giving them more authority over things?
That's like such a complex question because we've gone through tons of different iterations of our staff over the years. I can just tell you straight out, in the beginning of hiring, I was not good at hiring. I'm getting better at hiring. I'm like tenfold better today than I was in 2013. But hiring is one of the most challenging aspects of running a business. And I would say even this hiring environment in 2022 has been incredibly challenging. Finding great people and retaining great people is a skill. And most people are not born with the skill. And if somebody had told me that like a long time ago, that like I think there's a tendency to think like they just don't like me or there's something wrong. No, like you don't have a skill. You're missing a life skill of hiring. um, and there's places you can go to learn how to get better. And there's people you can hire that will come into your organization and make your hiring better. But yeah, I mean, I was so fortunate that I got a really amazing employee early on that was a natural leader in our company. And I truly still don't know why she came and worked there at the time. But certain people will come in your company and they are leaders. And you have to be able to identify that and then promote them. I'm not in the business like of trying to take like somebody that doesn't want to be a leader, you're not gonna force them. This person, I could see people naturally respected and followed them. This person was meticulous with their word. They did things on a high level. They inspired other people. You get someone like that, they're showing signs that they should be a leader. I also will say there's people that are with you for a leg of your journey, and they're not going to be okay when you're going on to the next level of your journey. You have some people that can grow with you, and there's some people like we had an employee with us a long time, and we realized like we're going to have to do things a little differently, and that the person's position was going to have to dramatically change where they wouldn't be the only one doing that role anymore. There would be multiple people in that role because the firm needed it. And they were like, I'm the only person that can do this. And I was like, that in my mind, I'm like, that's not scalable. And, they basically imploded because they wanted to, they kept saying like, I like the firm when I was the only one that did this job. That's not a mindset of growth. So, it's a really complicated process to evolve your staff over the years and grow your team to where you want it to go. But I think the people that are meant to come on your journey, it will be obvious. And you have to be willing to let go of the people that aren't ready to grow on your team and thank them for their service for the time they were there. But that's not where you're going.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think that is something that not enough people hear, is the reality that, scaling your team, adding more people, it's a complex problem. You're dealing with humans and human nature. You're dealing with emotions. Like it's not going to be an easy, like, hey, here's the 1, 2, 3 step formula for you to go follow. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. And, one thing we did in 2018 was we spent the entire year focused on our culture. And I think culture has a huge connection to hiring and retaining people. So if you're really clear, like I remember we had a meeting, like a meeting, and I realized like what my culture was. And usually your culture is really you, like kind of what you stand for, what you stand against. And you can memorialize that so you can start attracting people that are what we call like our tribe or our people that are of your tribe and of like your culture will love your organization. They will be excited to work there. People that radically oppose your tribe and they don't like anything you're about, they're not going to like working there. And it's not that it's not a good organization, it's just not a good place for them. And when you start to separate that and realize that you're not looking for everyone, you're simply looking for your people. Like my people, my tribe, we believe in these things. It's like Apple versus, PC. Like those are two different people. And
Mhm.
you're not going to make somebody that's a PC person love Apple, no matter how amazing it is. Right. And so stop taking it personally that this person doesn't like your organization or they don't like working there. It's just not their company. And then you have the people in your organization that I call the true believers. The moment a true believer comes in your organization, it's just so easy to obviously see they're a fit. This experience happened to me like a couple of months ago. We hired someone and I was like, oh my God, this person like loves the same things we love. It's so fun working with them. And they just like get it and they are so excited to be there. And they're naturally kind of like the same kind of values. They value a lot of the similar things. And that's really fun to work with people like that. But you kind of have to have a culture that has a point of view and is a little disruptive, you know?
Mhm. I love every bit of that because I think that that's something that people don't feel comfortable talking about or even hearing. So I'm so glad that you shared that. So now you mentioned, when you and I were talking before we hopped on and started recording about, kind of 2023, you're going to be on the road a bit more, speaking more. I know recently, if like I said, if people are following you on social media, if you're not, you're missing out. You had the open house where you had several different lawyers come through. So let's first talk about like why did you do the open house, and then we'll talk about your 2023 schedule.
Oh my gosh. So I've been kind of on like a conference tour this past year. I really have been stepping into my role as a visionary of the firm. And part of my role as a visionary is to continue learning how to become a better leader for the organization and to continue growing my vision for where we can go. And how I've done that really is by spending a lot of time with law firms that are significantly larger than mine. I mean, some of these firms are 10 times the size of my organization. And I have a lot of mentors and coaches that I spend a lot of time with. And we go to a lot of conferences. We learn. You go to a conference, you might implement one or two things, but you also never know who you're going to meet at these events. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to an event and like I meet one person and they introduce me to one idea or one person. It changes the entire course of the law firm. So my best role where I'm making the most progress for the firm is out making it rain, making business come in, and creating connections and learning and kind of like creating the vision. And so because that I've been going out to a lot of events. And so Crisp was coming here to Atlanta. And so a lot of our friends and colleagues and mentors are from all over the country. And they happen to be coming to Atlanta. So we're like, let's throw an open house. So it kind of just lined up that we knew a lot of people were going to be in town. And we didn't have an open house because we moved here during the pandemic. So we're like, this is a great opportunity to go ahead and, you know, get that event, while people are here in town. So yeah.
Awesome. Now for 2023, you're going to be on the, you said you're going to be speaking a lot more. Are there any major events that are lined up already that you're going to be at?
Yeah, I'm gonna be well, I don't know when this is airing, but I'm gonna be a keynote speaker. This is so crazy. At an event in about 2 weeks. And then I'm going to be speaking at the Women's Trial Travel Summit I believe it's going to be in Mexico. But I'm going to be going to National Trial Lawyers in January and a bunch of other, I mean, our conferences are just, it's like almost once a month, we're just on the road. But oh my gosh, amazing, amazing things to learn and people to learn from. And like I said, it's those lunch conversations. I had a conversation with a guy like literally a few days ago that gets 900 cases a month.
Wow. Wow.
I'm like, tell me more. And people started flocking around us. And I'm like, they're like, the conference is going. I'm like, I'm just going to stay right here. It's like, if you're curious, you will find out all kinds of amazing things by going to events.
Awesome. I love it. Well, where can people find you and Firm online if they're looking for you guys?
You can find us on our website, www.atlinjurylawgroup.com. You can also find us on the socials, TikTok, Instagram. They're all on the bottom of our website there, LinkedIn, YouTube, all that.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, one final question. Now, if you were talking to someone and said, hey, I was on the Law and Finance show with Terrell, and hey, you should go back and listen to my conversation that I had with Terrell. And hey, here are 2 really big takeaways you should take from that conversation. What would your 2 big takeaways be?
I think the biggest takeaway, which I think I take for granted, is that you are running a business and, you need to look at your organization as it is a business, because there are so many law firms that are great at law, like I talked about with, these other law firms I worked for, but the employees get frustrated because it's not well run. And then my second one would probably be, I don't know, Terrell, what do you think? I'm curious what you think.
I do think that one of the big ones was, finding your tribe. Because I think a lot of people are not comfortable with finding their tribe. And I think a lot of people are just like, I got to pretty much create a ad that's going to get everybody to apply. And it's like, you don't want everybody. You only want the people you're looking for. So I think that was a good one.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny. Like, it's just how much you take for granted is like, everybody knows that. Well, yeah, no, not everyone knows that,
Awesome. Well, hey, I have enjoyed having you on. I know you are a busy boss lady, leading an amazing company, leading an amazing team. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks so much for having me and for all the work you do. You're killing it out there, and I can't wait to continue watching you on your journey.
Well, thank you so much. If you're looking for ideas on how to manage and grow a profitable law firm, this Facebook group is perfect for you, because every week we are featuring conversations with successful lawyers and businesses related to law firms on tips, ideas, and technology that are helping many people grow and manage a profitable law firm. So if you're looking for great tips and ideas, you definitely want to click the link below so you can join the conversation and be part of the Law Firms and Finance Facebook group.